Hey, what's up guys? Christian here for Kriscoart. Super excited for this one, also because it was requested a lot, and we're talking about the VFX breakdown and everything that went into all the effect shots that you saw for the music video, The Answer. So we're talking about snow elements, we're talking about 3D tracking a scene, so you can pretty much add not just snow, but anything that you want in it really, and much more. So there's definitely gonna be a lot of information packed into this one, especially if you use After Effects, or even if you're into cinematography and you just wanna add little details, little touches here and there. This video is for you because it will allow you to do that. And also I want to mention that this video is in partnership with Dell and Nvidia. They sent over the hardware that essentially allowed me to finish this project, because the setup I had before just couldn't handle some of these shots. I mean, I was editing on a laptop and the VFX it wasn't cutting it. So I needed a proper solution, and this was just a perfect partnership. So there's going to be a little bit more on them later and how they actually helped to handle these heavy renders and these really heavy composite shots. Lot to unpack in this one, so hope you enjoy it. These effects actually were a nightmare. They were really, really hard. They look simple, and some of the techniques are very basic, but again, they just became so intense layer by layer that it was pretty overwhelming. So we're gonna simplify it, and we're gonna talk about it now. So let's jump into After Effects, and let's take a look at the first shots of how we added snow in a cabin in LA. So when you're shooting, it's good to have references. No matter what kind of VFX you're doing, just have a good sense of your environment, of the lighting of that particular scene, and the more information of all that stuff that you have, the more you can actually make some more concrete decisions later in post. Even things such as your camera height, your camera lens, if you have all this sort of metadata, even if it's written down on a piece of paper, it can help you when you are 3D tracking your scene, when you are essentially taking account of what was there on the day. So this is pretty huge to keep in mind when you are shooting. That's why big productions have VFX supervisors, so that they can even get references for HDRI lighting, which is a whole other thing, but we're not going there. We're not going into heavy 3D workflow. We're just keeping it basic with 2D compositing with different assets in After Effects. But you still need to 3D camera track your scene. You need to essentially tell After Effects where things are in space so that you can place things exactly where you want them. So this part actually seems the hardest, but it's probably the easiest, because After Effects has a built-in 3D camera tracker where essentially all you have to do in most cases is just drag and drop, and you're good to go. It'll analyze, do its magic, figure out the world, dimensions and distances through math and algorithms that I can't even wrap my head around, and it's done for you. So that's pretty simple. One thing that I will say, if you're dealing with complicated scenes, make sure you are doing a detailed analysis. That can give you some better results sometimes. And also look at the average pixel error. You want to stay below 1, ideally. If you're getting a little bit too crazy with that number, a little bit too higher than that, what it's telling you is essentially it's not super accurate. There might be some parts that are confusing it, and some of the tracking data might not be as reliable, and that's when you have things kind of sliding and slipping. Also, another thing that really throws the 3D tracker off are reflections, flares, what else? Oh, biggest of all, people or things moving in the frame. A subject maybe that is predominant in the shot, and he's taking up a lot of real estate in it, and the 3D tracker is sort of taking into account his dimensions and his weight in the scene as a part of the environment, and you don't want that, of course, because your actors move all throughout the environment, whereas the environment is just the environment, so you want that data alone. To solve this, you can do a quick garbage mat, just black out anything that is moving, anything that could be distracting to your tracker, and once you pre-comp it and you can just run the track and the analysis over that, then you should be fine. So this is kind of to summarize how you 3D track a scene very simply in After Effects. If you want to dive deeper, I've made videos in the past that really take you step by step, but I wanted to make sure that I included some of this here because, this is the foundation. The beautiful thing from here is that once you have your scene 3D tracked, you can do anything, really. You can add stuff in it wherever you want, and a really simple way that I did this was by essentially selecting a bunch of your tracking points, and you can do this just by selecting the 3D camera tracker effect if you're not seeing all these dots on your screen. But if you select it, you see these dots, and then you can select certain areas or maybe a certain groups of dots on certain surfaces. For example, I did this with the back windows, the walls, And once you have a solid that you create from that information, now you know exactly where that thing is, where that place is in your space, in your environment. So what I do from there, all it means is that I have to copy the position coordinates of that layer, of that 3D layer, and then make whatever other 3D layer I'm bringing into my composition, to have those same position coordinates just by pasting them onto that new element that you're bringing in. So it's really that simple. The main steps are you 3D camera track your scene, you figure out where things are in your space where you want to add them, and you just add stuff. That's pretty much it. After that, it's just color correcting them, which was definitely a pain for this one. Once you have these basic steps, it's just a matter of repeating them, and that's what kind of adds complexity to it all. I mean, that's when you start to get a lot of layers, and that's really why things slow down. That's really why things get confusing and overwhelming, but really the techniques are super simple. And the nice thing is, the more you get comfortable in all this, and also the more that you're organized and you're naming your layers, the more you can stack things and add detail to your shots, and also have it behave properly, since everything is sticking to your scene, moving with your scene. What you saw with the footprints in the snow, for example, were just these footprint textures that I tracked into the scene, and I just kind of rotated them to match with my floor plane. And then I just revealed them with a mask underneath the foot of Steven, which the portion of that foot was also rotoscoped so that the footprint could actually be behind the foot. I'm gonna insert a quick tip here. If you're rotoscoping anything, consider it outsourcing it, because there's a lot of really talented people from all over the world that could also offer you some decently cheap labor, and it could save you the headaches of rotoscoping. That's what I did for this project, and it honestly saved me in terms of time for the deadlines and in terms of just stress, because no one wants to rotoscope. But anyways, you get the subject rotoscope, now you can add stuff behind them, and that applies to adding snow behind that layer. And aside from adding effects behind your subject, you can also create a subtle layer of separation, and you can bring even more attention to your subject, because you can add some atmospheric elements, some different color contrast in the background in relation to your subject. And this is where enhancing your cinematography a little bit can come in. But from adding these snow elements to fire on the wall, the techniques are pretty much the same. And a great thing that helps VFX like this is not just showing them, but also building up a certain structure around them to really sell them. Almost like a joke to a comedian, you need a good setup, and then that VFX can kind of hit that punchline much harder. And that brings us to this piano sequence where it's fully engulfed in flames, and I actually got some questions about this. And in this case, it's actually not even a VFX at all. This is 100% unedited stock footage. And of course, this is super specific, but that goes to show how simple things like that can add a ton of production value. And to dig deeper into this particular shot, just like what we did with the footprints, a lot of these are just textures that are overlaid, and they're sticking thanks to the tracking data that we have to whatever surface, and then we just kind of expand different masks to reveal them. And that, along with overlaying different ember elements or smoke elements and things like that, it really kind of helps to bring it all together. Another good glue to all of this are these light flares that you're seeing. Because we are in such a low light situation, it would make sense that the lens and the camera kind of flares up a little bit with all these different sources of light coming in. And I'm using elements from the first pack that we launched, Vintage Light Effects. And then finally, of course, we have to talk about the snow elements, which I'm actually super proud that all of the particle effects that I used to create these shafts of light, or even the snow coming in, was all from my new digital pack, Particles. So I'm 2 for 2 mentioning and using my own packs, but I think they're pretty affordable and also super useful. And obviously I have some bias in that, but I did use them 100% for all this project. So in my case, with my assets, it was super simple. I could just insert them as a 3D layer like we saw before, and I can kind of fine tune the edges and really give it a specific direction or shape with some masks. And then I just did a really lazy color correction. I just added a photo filter to sort of bring in whether they need it to be warmer or cooler. That is pretty much all that went into the main breakdown of all these effects. I hope you found this useful. I hope you can see that you can apply this for a lot of stuff, not just what we covered specifically in this video. I also want to thank Dell and Nvidia for sending this beast of a computer over. I'm just so grateful and thankful that I finally have something that can keep up with the demands of shots like this one and some pretty intense projects that we're amping up to 4K, 6K, and even more. So having the right backbone to it is really important. The reason why I chose Dell and Nvidia as my main workstation are for my specific needs at this point in time. For me personally, I love what Nvidia is doing. They're at the very forefront of AI, and also not to mention their ray tracing platform. So that's personally why I'm excited about the new hardware and what it enables me to do. And that is without even getting into VR, which is something I want to start learning, you know, virtual production and kind of combining real-time rendering with VFX for a short film, for, you know, different film productions. So there's definitely going to be a lot of uses beyond even just the speed that I benefited from for this particular project. And by the way, I received the GPU and the PC separate, so I had to put it together, which was a first. And although it was super simple, to me, it kind of felt like this.
We must survive. So choose your weapons wise. Stand and fight for your
Alright, and that concludes this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I want to give a huge thanks to Nvidia and to Dell again for sending over this amazing hardware and enabling me to do even bigger VFX and you know, deal with slower render times. So huge shout out to them. This came at just the right time because I was really struggling to complete the VFX that you saw featured in this video. So having a proper workstation to get them done and get them done on time was a lifesaver. So thanks again, and thank you for watching this video. And until next time, my name is Chris Trini for Kriscoart, and I'll see you in the next video.